relationships, here today and gone tomorrow. Because hey, who's got all the time in the world to continue with the same old boring person for the rest of your life? And so on and so on and so on. And yet, when we're looking at mindfulness or we're looking at building our emotional intelligence, because it's a slow process, and yet because you can handle things in the moment, I'd much rather say let's do insta hacks that help us be able to deal with those emotions, to be able to deal with the manifestation of our emotions in our physical body, in the way that we speak, etc. And of course, on the impact that they leave in our lives. Let me give you the analogy of, yeah, absolutely, Zena. Let me give you the analogy of a computer. A computer has hardware, a computer has software. Yes? Similarly, the human being, you and I, we have both hardware and software. So our brain, our nervous system, our body, all of these are our hardware, right? Hardware. Our thoughts, feelings, emotions are our software. The operating system is our relationship to other people. Thank you so much, Team Creator. It's your relationship to other people around you. It's your relationship, your symbiotic relationship or asymbiotic relationship that you have with the environment around you, with other living beings around you, and so on and so forth. This, all of this stuff actually helps us establish an understanding between our hardware and our software and our operating system, which also, by the way, if you're a person who understands energy or who works with energy, it's also about your energy. It's also about, if you're on the spiritual path, it's about your spiritual connection that you have with the world around you, your hardware and your software. So the operating system, which is your energy, so to speak, that's operating all of this. Now, what mindfulness does for emotional intelligence, and for the purpose of this, our chat today, our conversation today, I may use them interchangeably, but please know that mindfulness helps build emotional intelligence. And when you are emotionally intelligent, you are automatically being more mindful towards yourself, towards the people around you, towards your own thoughts, triggers, feelings, emotions, and so on and so forth. Now, if we were to continue with the analogy of the computer, what mindfulness does is it upgrades your internal operating system. It helps give that little bit of a fillip. It kind of, pushes up to make those conscious, unconscious changes that needs to happen. It starts to, when you practice mindfulness actually helps you in bringing up what was subconscious up until now, bringing it into your conscious reality, into your conscious understanding, and start to build a very critical component of emotional intelligence, which is called empathy. Now, what is empathy? It's my ability to, mostly people will say it's my ability to walk in your shoes a mile and know how it fits. So I take it, pardon me, I also have said that, so I'm also making fun of myself. Actually, I'm making more fun of myself rather than anyone else. Empathy, as I see it today, is more about me, for sure, walking a mile in your shoe, but walking a mile in your shoes from your perspective, not from my perspective. I'm walking towards the sunset. If I'm walking towards the sunset and I'm looking at the sunset and I'm paying attention to the sunset, these shoes don't really hurt that much. Well, that's your perspective. Maybe it's not the perspective of the person you were trying to be empathetic with. It's your ability to understand them from their world. I'll give you an example. Oftentimes I have found myself just taking a step back and saying, oh my God, I didn't realize this, the other person could be going through X. So very recently, I had a little, in one of my relationships, I had a little bit of a bump where I had some expectations. And as human beings, it's natural, it's normal to have expectations. I had some expectations that the way that I voiced them, they landed on the other individual in a very hard, demanding, I'm the only one, you better be taking care only of me kind of a manner. And what I was unable to see was I was placing the burden of my expectations on their shoulders without really looking at how much of a weight were they already carrying. On the surface of it, I was like, I understand your problems, I'm looking at you from your problems and so on. But in my actions, in my true understanding, in my true empathy, I also failed in understanding the burdens that they were carrying. It's when they turned around and they told me what they said to me, it struck me that I was so far from being empathetic. I was looking at their world from my perspective. I was not looking at their world from their perspective. And the minute that became present to me, my entire inner and outer worlds shifted, realigned. And of course, I'm in a more empathetic state. I do remember my emotions, the manifestation of my emotions impacts other people around me. I don't know what state they are in still. And that's fine for me right now. They may need their space, and if my relationship has to get better, it will with them. But if it doesn't have to get better, at least I know they had the space to speak their truth, and I had the space to learn a new truth about myself. I'm not always empathetic, and that is true for every single human being on the planet. If you remember, if you've already attended the sessions before, if you remember, the minute we are triggered with something, and sometimes the triggers are very, very deep and instantaneous, both at the same time. If we are very deeply triggered by something, our natural instinct to either fight, fly, or freeze will kick in, because we still have, from our reptilian, from our early mammalian brain, we still have the need to survive and to protect ourselves, whether mentally, physically, or emotionally, from anything that we perceive as danger, is threat to our well-being. Empathetic people, and I will come back to why I'm speaking so much about empathy, but empathetic people are able to say, okay, me looking out for the other person, me looking at the other person doesn't necessarily have to mean my own physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic well-being being threatened. So that's the power of being an empathetic person, and what mindfulness does, and that's the reason why I spoke so much about it. What mindfulness does is it helps us become more empathetic, truly more empathetic, i.e., looking at another person from their world, their perspective, so that when we get triggered, we're not triggered so deeply. I'm going to let that sink in for a moment. Somebody says something to you, you get triggered. You're a mindful person, or you know how to practice mindfulness. You take a step back and you try and look at the other person from their world, from their perspective. You will automatically start to slow down in your reaction / your response to the trigger that had happened. And over a period of time, when you're able to look at your trigger, as we've spoken about in past sessions, you will find that the intensity of response / reaction to that trigger, to that stimulus or stimuli, if there are multiple, will start to slow down and eventually recede, hopefully get eliminated. That's a hope for the long run. But that's one of the things that mindfulness does. It, as I was saying, it upgrades your internal operating system that you are operating from. And it allows you to give seasoned, reasoned, skillful responses, even in the face of highly charged, highly triggering situations. Naman, we will come to how to practice mindfulness. That's what this whole session is all about. But just to kind of, set the ground for the importance of mindfulness. I know it's become a buzzword today. It's been a buzzword for the past few years, and it's going to continue to be a buzzword for the many next decades to come because of its power. And from buzzword, I'm hoping, hope springs eternal, I'm hoping that people will start to make mindfulness daily practice, kind of like breathing. And so hopefully we will be a better, calmer, more inclusive world. But that's me wishing for the future. How does mindfulness work? So if I were to go, like if you remember from last time, Zaina, we were speaking about the neurons, etc. Typically, when you're being mindful, you will slow down your breath. When you slow down your breath, you will allow your, everything in your body, every area in your body to kind of be able to get in oxygen, to think things through, and it'll send a signal to the right parts of your brain. If you remember, we were speaking about the amygdala hijack the last time. The amygdala hijack reduces what the information that the thalamus gets, and then the prefrontal cortex gets, and the relay between the three elements or the three parts of the brain, when that starts to slow down and when that allows you to give a more conscious response, that's how mindfulness actually works. So when you're in mindfulness, we'll come to the hacks, and we'll speak about how each one of them is working. But broadly, I've just touched upon the tip of the iceberg as to how mindfulness works. I'll need to go a lot into the brain work. And very honestly, am I the best expert to talk about the brain and its neurons and its synapses and how, why certain stuff gets triggered, why certain calmness occurs? I'm not the right expert to talk about that. I can study it and I can get back to you. But right now, in this moment, I'm not the best expert to create the linkage between deep emotional, deep brain work and mindfulness. So please excuse me for that. Coming back to, actually, let me just try and look at if I can explain that with what I'm going to say next. So what mindfulness does, and please, I'm going to be looking left and right because I have a phone in which I'm doing Instagram, and then I have the laptop where I'm doing Creator, so I'm trying to take care of both sides. So don't think I'm not looking at you or I'm not looking for you. So coming back, mindfulness actually promotes emotional regulation, right? We understand that part of it. It reduces impulsivity by, so what it does is, because I've been mindful, I've done the hacks, the gap between stimulus and response, what happened to me and what I did with what happened to me, that reduces. The I want to share something with you. Viktor Frankl, the gentleman who was, I don't know if you guys have read his book. If you haven't, it's a very important book to read, Man's Search for Meaning. His words in the book on surviving the stuff that happened in the Holocaust, in the camps that he was in, he said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, there is an opportunity for me to decide. I'm not using his exact words, but in that space, there is the opportunity for me to decide how I want to respond. I remember the last few words of the line very well. In my response lies my freedom. In my response lies my growth and my freedom. So there is such beauty and such power in that when you're being, yes, thank you, Shuchita. Hello, Shuchita. Nice to have you here. It is Man's Search for Meaning. Thank you for putting that in the chat box. So what really happens is, because you're practicing mindfulness, your internal operating system, or your, how you interact with the world around you, how your being interacts with the world around you, that starts to shift. And your entire range of internal, so intrapersonal as well as interpersonal relations or your skills can be improved. You need to do it with practice, of course. It doesn't happen out and without practice, but you're actually able to change the trajectory of your responses. Instead of, stimulus happens, instead of responding like that, you'll choose to maybe hook your head and say, somebody clapped somewhere. Okay, not a threat to my being. I can go back to work. So you can actually change. So what mindfulness does is it allows you and it helps us to recognize and observe, how am I experiencing life around me right now? How am I experiencing the moment? Am I anxious? Am I fearful? Am I sad? Am I guilty? Am I lonely? Am I feeling drained and empty? Am I angry? Am I frustrated? How am I thinking? What am I doing? Why is this thinking helping me? Why is this thinking pushing me into all of these responses that I'm having? So mindfulness can actually help you start becoming mindful, simple, aware of what's really going on. There are multiple hacks that can help you. And I'm going to talk about those hacks today. But just before I do, any questions that I can answer? Let's see if there's a question. Just please put it into the chat box. I'll wait for a moment. And I haven't forgotten your question on how to practice mindfulness, which is going to be coming there. Sometimes it happens to me when I see some violent scenes in the movies, I feel some pain and reaction to exactly that part of my body which I saw hurting in the movie. I do, yes. Absolutely. You're mirroring the pain of the protagonist who's getting beaten up, whether it's the villain or it's the hero. Or you're mirroring the pain that the that the heroine gets. Or whoever gets, right? It could even be an animal. Whoever's the protagonist at that point. Oops, sorry. Whoever's the protagonist at that point of time, you're mirroring that pain. And we have something called mirror neurons as well. So possibly that's what's happening because you're experiencing a high level of maybe sympathy, or maybe you're just stepping into empathy and you're correlating what's happening with them to your life. You're possibly trying to see, Shuchita, that if this were me, how would I handle it? If this were me, would I be able to deal with it? And so on. So I hope that starts to give you an understanding of what's going on with you. Charlotte says, we often tell someone to be mindful, talk about grounding techniques, how else to get mindful in day-to-day living. We're coming to that. There are actually a lot of ways: meditation, journaling, grounding. For those of you who don't know what grounding is, it's actually literally feeling the ground, the earth between your beneath your feet, or connecting to the sun to ground yourself, or connecting to something related to nature, which helps you begin to center yourself and pull yourself back from the feeling of I'm flying. Maybe I'm anxious and I'm not even in my body. I've stepped out of my body, or oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. So when you do grounding exercises, pardon me, also, I definitely want to acknowledge that when your mind is racing too much and you do any of these exercises, it starts to ground you. It starts to center your energy from everywhere that it is scattered, and it starts to bring your energy into the center. So everyone who's watching, wherever you're watching, whether you're watching on LinkedIn or anywhere on socials, or even right here on Creator, I'm going to invite you to just pull your hands out like this. Wherever your hands are, just pull them apart like this for a moment, apart like that, okay, a little distance, and slowly, gently start to bring your hands together. And wherever you feel a little resistance in your hands, either hand or both hands together, just pause there. And then tell me what you're feeling, or at least identify for yourself, what do you feel when when you stop your hands and become aware of or present to what's happening, the sensations in your hands right now. So maybe one of you can, or some of you can put it into the chat box. I'm also just going to check. Shifa says there are some vibrations in the body. Very, very well expressed, Shifa. Vibrations could be one way that you feel it. Like a physical pull, a feel of being restricted. Very well said also. Very, very well said also. Some of you may feel, like Charlotte said, like a physical pull. Like there's something, like you're holding a ball and that ball is pushing itself into your hands. Some of you could feel a pulsating feeling, like a throb in your hands. For some people, there might be literally pinpricks, kind of like when your hand goes to sleep because you've rested on its side, or something to that effect, or you've held your, you've kept your foot tucked under you for a little while, and you try to move your leg and you're like, ah. You could also feel a little clammy, like a little wetness in your palm. Either of those, any sensation that you go through, that's fine. That's telling you that there is energy. Okay, it's very palpable. Never let anyone tell you energy, shrenergy, nothing works. Increased focus in that gap between the hands of sorts. So, Charlotte, what's happening is because you were focusing on bringing your hands together slowly, you were able to palpably feel, tangibly feel energy, which otherwise most of us understand only in physics. Vibrations, waves, etc. All of that stuff is energy. And that you can actually feel the energy. You don't need to be an energy worker, you don't need to be a magician. If you just begin to focus, you will actually start to become present to the energy around us. And what mindfulness does is it helps us pull back all the scattered energy. I got angry, my energy got scattered in 5 different directions. I felt sad, my energy started to seep out from me. Now, when you start to do grounding and you start to do mindfulness, it starts to bring back that energy into focus at a certain point. Let's say, for example, somebody is doing a guided meditation with you, and they ask you to close your eyes, to feel the ground firmly beneath your feet, and to start becoming aware of the sensations beneath your feet. Now, your energy, you were angry, or you were sad, or you were simply feeling overwhelmed. There wasn't any anger, no frustration. You were just feeling overwhelmed because, oh my God, there's too much that needs to be done. And somebody, or even yourself, you just start telling yourself, okay, let's start to become aware of the ground beneath my feet, or the sun over my head, or the sound of the water rustling close by, whichever one you choose. And then you start to focus on that, and you focus your entire attention on that particular part. If it's Mother Earth, then you're using your feet. If it's the sun, then you visualize the sun on your head, on your face, on your body, and you start to become present to that. Everything else goes out of your mind. So mindfulness actually helps you bring back and center your energy in a certain place so that you start to feel calmer, you start to feel more collected, more grounded. Simple as that. So I hope, Charlotte, that answers your question. And I think it was Naman who had asked me the question. So welcome, Charlotte, who had asked me the question of how do we be mindful? And this is the beginning. There are a few different things you can do. And what I'm going to say next, you're going to say, oh my God, how does one even do that? But take a pause. Literally, like you're watching your favorite movie on a recording, and you don't want to miss some part because you've got another thought running in your head. You hit the pause button, right? Those 2 vertical bars. Literally do that with yourself. Pauses are incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful, both for your inside. When you're looking at yourself, you feel a disempowering emotion, you pause. You don't react immediately, you pause. You look at that and say, what am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this right now? What is it doing to me right now? So you've taken a pause, you've gone inwards. Instead of lashing out at the world, which is your outward emotional intelligence, you first look inside. And then you ask yourself, if I do this, if I react like this, like I was going to react, how is it going to make the other person feel? And you realize the impact, the repercussions of your reaction. And because you're practicing mindfulness, or because even if you're just beginning to practice mindfulness, you pause, you stop, and you don't react the same way, or you choose better words. So when you pause, you're actually able to physically put a pause to your reaction. I'm going to pause and let you think about that for a moment. Now, when you've paused, the other thing that happens is you've taken a breath, energy has, or oxygen has rushed through, it's allowed you to calm down. Yet another thing that happens is when you pause, let's say you're in communication with a classmate or a teacher or a colleague, and they're speaking to you, but you feel that you may not be getting the entire information. So when you say something and then you pause, you're actually able to observe their facial expressions, their eye contact. You're able to observe their body language in that pause that you've given. You will get some extra information, and you will then be able to put the pieces together and say, maybe this individual is feeling like this. Maybe this is what's happening. And so I need to change my response to this individual. Let's say it's a team member and they come to you and they say, I need to speak to you. And you say, okay, sure, come speak to me. And they come and they start telling you, I just wanted to talk to you. Now you're a busy person. So you're like, oh, come on, move on with it. Come on. Let's out with it and let's be done and over with it. But that person is like, I actually pause, observe that they're fidgeting, observe that they're feeling uncomfortable in saying what they have to say. Then choose your words. Okay, looks like something is bothering you. Would you like a moment? Or you'll say something like, seems like you want to say something, but you're unable to. I promise you, what you say is safe with me. Assure them. And please then don't go and talk to 10 other people about it. Build your trust. But assure them, pause, let them know that you're still there, you're not getting impatient. A lot of times I've seen people do this. Okay, you were saying? Come on, did you want to say something? Like, I thought you wanted to meet with me because you had a reason to meet with me. Pause, relax. They might be feeling very scared. They might be feeling apprehensive. What if what they have to say to you might come back to them in the form of a repercussion? What if what they have to say to you makes you feel upset and they can't handle that? Observe their body language, observe their cues in the pause. In the pause. I was just reading and seeing if there's anything coming up on chat. I'm pausing now. In the meanwhile, if somebody's typing something out there, what I also just want to talk about is, I just spoke about the facial expression. It's very interesting. The human face can actually present a very wide range of emotions. And sometimes it'll only just be a very, or just imperceptible widening of the eyes, raising of the eyebrow, or even sometimes you say something to the other person and they go, or even they were smiling, they go, and then they go back to the smile. That micro expression can give you so much information, so much cues as to what should your next action be. And when you're mindful, when you're truly mindfully watching those facial cues, when you're truly mindfully paying attention to them, you can actually salvage your relationships. And if you don't, you can damage them. And I'm saying this not just from information received by books, watching other people. I'm telling you this from hard experience where I have failed to observe the body language, the facial cues of a loved one, and have left both of us feeling very, very sad, very distressed, to the point of saying, you know what, maybe we should not be talking to each other. And then realizing I was a fool and I should have been able to. And why should I have been able to? Because I should know better, right? If I'm talking about emotional intelligence, I better be able to observe all of this. I better be able to handle all of this. Thankfully, for me, really thankfully, by and large, I am aware. Unfortunately, for most people who do not have any interest in, or who don't even have the knowledge of emotional intelligence, mindfulness, and so on and so forth, they don't even realize it. So if I falter 10%, somebody else may be faltering 5% only. Somebody else might be faltering 75%. The idea is for us to identify What is the information we can get in these pauses, etc.? How can we actually go ahead and ensure not only are we communicating um, what we are feeling with love, with tenderness, with understanding, we're also able to receive the same thing from others. Am I able to receive the other person's love? Am I able to receive the other person? And love can sometimes come in the form of anger, can come in sometimes come in the form of frustration, can sometimes come in the form of somebody yelling at you. But when you're mindful, you'll be able to discern, is this anger born out of ego? Is this anger born out of fear? Is this anger born out of love? And so on and so forth. That's another reason for you to be mindful. Another way that, so facial cues was one. Another thing, yeah, this is one very, um, this is one very useful hack that I find it useful to use. Useful hack that I find it useful to use. That's a lot of use over there. Um, for us to be able to change something, one thing that helps is, can you label it? I call it the label it, LABEL space IT, the label it exercise. It's something that I learned in a program called Avatar many decades ago. Well, nearly 2 decades ago. And when I was doing that, when I was doing the program, label it essentially spoke about how you take a look at all the the mixed up emotions that you're feeling right now. So you could be feeling very angry because somebody said a certain thing, and then you start to feel sad about, I'm not loved. Now there's a whole mix up, there's a whole glop and glom, as we call it, of emotions happening over there. Instead of judging it, if you just simply label it and say, okay, I'm feeling gloopy, or I'm feeling, so don't use a regular dictionary word, create a word for yourself that helps you understand that these are the emotions I'm going through, and therefore I need to do something about it. Okay, so I'm feeling very eagerly right now. Give it a funny word that also helps you shift the energy of the emotion that you're going through. Instead of saying I'm feeling nervous, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry, instead, if you just say that, if you just say some other word, something that takes away the emotional charge out of it, it helps you deal with it a whole lot better, because you will judge yourself less when you say I'm feeling icky or gloopy, rather than when you say I'm very irritated right now, I'm so embarrassed right now, and so on and so forth. So just weigh on that. Will it be easier for you to handle the situation when you're angry, and when you're saying I'm angry, and when you're saying I'm frustrated, when you're saying I'm sad? Or will you be able to handle it better when you say I'm giggly, I'm gloopy, and so on and so forth? Think about that and put the answer to that in the chat box. When I look at Naman's question, he's asking, how do I observe someone's emotions? Sometimes it's very difficult. Of course it is. A lot of people also have the art of being able to hide their facial expressions very well. Also, people who win at poker, no man's business. But even those who don't play poker are able to actually hide their emotions really well for whatever reasons. They may have been taught, don't ever express your emotions clearly, otherwise people will take advantage of you. They'll laugh at you, they'll make fun of you, whatever be the reason. These are people who hide their emotions via their facial expressions or their body language really well. So it helps to start learning to observe. A very beautiful side effect of mindfulness is observation, and it's a symbiotic relationship. The more you observe keenly, silently, and without judgment, you will start being more mindful. And the more mindful you are, your own powers of observation will go up. It's a beautiful relationship there. So start to observe, Naman. Make notes of what you see, and when you ask them afterwards. So start observing people who you really love and trust and have an honest, open relationship with. Observe them and go back to them after the incident has happened and tell them, you know what? I thought what I observed was this. I'm trying to build my observation skills. I didn't mean to keep you as a guinea pig, but this is what I observed. Was I correct? It'll do 3 things. Number one, it'll help them see you in a different light. It'll help them see that you're trying to learn something, to be a more empathetic human being. So it'll deepen the bond between the two of you. Number two, it will help you understand them better. And number three, it'll help you build the skill of observation. Win-win situation if you start to learn, observe like this, and go and ask people who you trust for the feedback that they are the best people to give to you, rather than assuming this is what they might be going through. Doesn't help. So label your emotions, remove the emotional charge, and you'll find that that in itself helps you become a lot more mindful. Um, Observation was another hack that I spoke about. I think one of the things that we don't do is we dismiss our, sorry, we don't look at our feelings and validate them. We're very quick to dismiss our feelings. We're very quick to brush them under the carpet. No, 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 I can't feel angry because that'll make me, that'll get me labeled as an angry person. Oh, I can't let the other person know I'm sad because it might upset them. We don't validate our emotions, and if we don't validate them for a really long time, there are a few different things that might happen. One, they might become literally like a wild child throwing a tantrum, so it'll suddenly burst. And then you'll be like, you'll also be taken aback, and the people around you who you're involved with and interacting with, they might be taken aback. Another thing that may happen, which to me or to my mind is more dangerous, is that you will suppress them, and you will keep suppressing them, suppressing them, suppressing them, suppressing them, suppressing them until they become disease or disease. So please do validate your emotions. Please don't brush them under the carpet. Please feel your emotions. I think one of the emotions that we really, really brush under the carpet because it's not socially acceptable is loneliness. We're taught, what is this? What do you mean by you're lonely? Why do you need, why are you worried about? If you're feeling lonely, it's very important, especially in today's day and age where we're hyper connected and hyper isolated. I may have 100,000 followers online, but really, how many of them do I have deep relationships with? I do a lot of coaching, and sometimes I end up coaching celebrities. Sometimes I end up coaching stars, and so on and so on and so on. Sometimes I end up coaching important businessmen and businesswomen. And what the one thing that I hear from them is this whole conversation of loneliness. I can't trust people around me because I'm constantly feeling that they will use me or they want something from me. So a lot of people don't have very close friends today. And equally, especially the younger generation, pardon me, I don't mean to judge you. I'm not judging you. In fact, I empathize with you a whole lot. I was speaking to somebody else earlier today about the same thing. We are so connected on social media. We will send kisses and hugs and God knows what not emojis. But come the first sign of real interaction, and I find it very, very scary to say that a lot more people are a lot more lonely than they have ever been in life, even when there were only telegrams and there were only trunk calls when you had to talk through the operator and say, hello, 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 what's going on? Hello, can you hear me? And then the operator would say, sorry, time up. Do you want me to extend the call? So please validate what you're feeling, validate your emotions. Notice I'm not saying make a big deal out of it. Make a deal bigger than it deserves or than is required. I'm just simply saying validate your emotion. Acknowledge the fact that you're feeling sad, you're feeling lonely, you're feeling angry, you're feeling hurt. That's another thing. We're taught to not express hurt. Because if you express hurt, then other people will hurt you even more. Don't tell them what are your buttons. So we don't acknowledge it to ourselves also. Build your awareness of what you're feeling, how you're feeling, why you're feeling, and be able to label that emotion so powerfully that you are actually able to not just validate it, but let it stop having a hold over you. What's another mindfulness hack? There's actually this, there are these exercises that I can speak to you about. One is called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 game. 5 is what? Can you name 5 things that you see in the room with you? Can you name 4 things that you can feel? I can feel the chair on my back. I can feel my feet on the floor, and so on and so forth. So 5 things you see in the room, 4 things you feel, Three things you can hear right now. I can hear my fingers tapping on the laptop. I can hear the hum of the AC. I can hear noises in the background from the TV in the room opposite, and so on and so forth. Name two things you can either smell right now or you can think about the smell of right now. And then finally come to name one good thing about yourself. So, what you're doing is you're structuring your brain to start focusing downwards, and you're letting out all other thoughts because you are now beginning to focus on just these five things. Notice these are, each one of them are related to one sense. I said five things you can see in the room, four things you can feel. So you've got sight and you've got touch. um, three things that you can hear. So you've got the sense of hearing. Two things that you can smell, so olfactory, and one good thing about yourself. The only sense that we haven't used is the sense of taste. So you can also add that. Name three things that you can hear and three things that you can remember the taste of. You can also add taste to that if you'd like to. So this 5 4 3 2 1 exercise, I feel, is very, very, very is a very powerful hack that you can use, mindfulness hack. Another one that I find very useful is open awareness. Mostly we hear people telling us, close your eyes, relax, and now breathe in. And then, I'm not making fun of the people who do this. I do this myself. I lead people through meditations morning and evening. And this is definitely one of the things I ask them to do. But a mindfulness hack is, instead of closing your eyes, because sometimes you may not be able to close your eyes. You're driving the car. Please don't close your eyes. God's sake. Okay. But keep your eyes open and look around you. Allow your senses to become aware of the world around you. Let's say you're driving and you got a phone call that made you extremely angry, vulnerable, sad, annoyed, any of those things. And you need to calm yourself down and collect yourself because you're going for an important meeting. And you can't go with a scattered frame of mind and completely deterred energy. So, what you do is you start to observe all the cars around you. You start to observe the sounds of the honking if you're in India. You start to observe the sounds of car whizzing past if you're not in India. You start to take in the fragrance of the car if you have a car fragrance. If not, then you roll the window down and you take in a big whiff of air. You start to feel how the steering wheel feels underneath your hands and how your back and your hips and your thighs feel against the chair that, the car seat that you're sitting on. So open awareness, take it all, let it all come in. Don't fixate on any one thought, emotion, feeling that you're going through. Look at all of it together. You will find that it actually starts to settle your mind down. It's called open awareness. So, different from closed eye meditating, but does the exact same job of getting you to meditate, which gets you to become present in the here and now rather than going into the shenanigans of your mind. Charlotte says, you mentioned about over labeling feelings. Yes, there are some people who go overboard with expressing their feelings, and not everyone listening might accept it. What's the downside for a person who over labels? You said it in your question also. People might stop listening, people might stop accepting. You will get to a point where you will find your relationships breaking down. And that's a huge, for someone like me, that's a huge risk. That's a huge okay, Tejasvi, I'll just do that. It's a huge risk that you take because do you really want to risk your relationships? Do you really want to be that nonchalant about them, that risky with them? If you do, then sure, by all means, go ahead and be the prima donna, be the drama queen, and so on and so forth. But if you're really interested in maintaining your relationships, then my invitation is, number one, don't overlabel yourself from the perspective that Charlotte was speaking about or asking the question on. But the other thing is, don't overindulge in, when you start labeling your emotions, don't overindulge in your emotions. I'm feeling so sad. Oh God, this sadness is not just leaving me. It's such a sad, sad world. Everything will necessarily start becoming sad if you just continue to focus on sad, 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 and sad. Don't create a trauma and a drama out of what you're feeling right now. Something happened, it happened. Has it changed the world around you? Maybe it has. Has it impacted you personally? Maybe it has. Have you stopped living and breathing because of that? Maybe you have, but you know what? If you stop breathing, if your pulse has stopped, if you're dead and gone, it doesn't matter. It will not matter whether you labeled it, whether they said something to you, and so on and so forth. But if you're alive and everything else is okay, please don't make a big deal about overindulging in your emotions. Acknowledging your emotions and working on them is very different from doing a deep dive into your emotions and drowning in them. Please don't drown, is what I'm saying. Sure, I'm glad Charlotte says thanks again for citing examples too. Lovely. So, Tejasvi, you want me to repeat what open awareness is all about? Open awareness is when you start to observe everything around you in the present moment with all your senses. So, start becoming aware of what can you see around you, what can you feel in the here and now, what can you taste. Let's say, for example, you're at home and you're sitting at your dinner table and somebody says something which is very cutting and you don't want to respond. So you just pick up a piece of your food that you were going to eat. Instead of throwing it away in anger and in a display of extreme emotion, put the piece of food on your tongue and really savor its taste. Like, really feel. For example, yesterday I was eating a wild pear, and just because it was so beautiful, I actually felt it. It was so tender, so juicy and succulent. It really brought me joy. I wasn't angry or anything. I was just enjoying fruit. So when you use that ability to truly become present to what's happening in the world around you, you stop going back inside, which is where the monkey mind is jumping up and down and creating such a brouhaha that you're like, stop. So that's what open awareness, if you want to call it meditation, sure, but the technique is called open awareness. So you can do that. I'm going to just put the name of a book. Allow me a moment to see it and tell you. I'm forgetting the name of the author. I might need to go into my Instagram and see. So please bear with me, or maybe I find it. Just give me a moment, essentially. It's called Practicing Mindfulness. Practicing Mindfulness. And it is, yeah, it is by an author named Matthew Sokolov. You could go get this book. I will also tell you where you can get it from. Oh man, okay. You can order it from this website. I will also just put it on my Instagram live. We're talking about the, bear with me, guys. I'm sure there's a better way to do it. This is how I know. So we're talking about practicing mindfulness by Matthew Sokolov. It's a great book to read. If you just go ahead, find the book, read it, you'll find more and more examples and exercises of how you can practice mindfulness on a daily basis. Okay, guys, can somebody tell me if you can see me still? And then I will proceed to give you the last maybe 2 techniques before we call it an evening. Okay, awesome. Sorry about that. The tab crashed and well, the tab crashed. So coming back, I was talking to you guys about the exercise or the mindfulness hack called Just Like Me. And this is about, acknowledging that another person is just like you. And just like you, they also have their challenges. They also have their pain points. They also have their realities and so on. Maybe the first step of um, empathy, just to be able to say, hey, you're just as human as I am, right? So if you're going through something, if you're saying something to me, it's obviously because of a reason that you are dealing with me with. It doesn't necessarily have to be me who's causing the issue for you. And just like me, you are going through this pain. Just like I would have felt hurt if someone had called me a nasty name, I'm sure you're going through the same hurt. Just like I would have, you are just like me. That's one of the things that you can do. Another thing that you can do is um, to practice forgiveness for yourself and for the person who is triggering you off in the moment. A lot of people who practice mindfulness and who have built their emotional intelligence, especially when the trigger comes in the form of a person or their behavior, these people who have practiced mindfulness or who are even now in that moment practicing mindfulness, they're able to actually say, I forgive myself for taking umbrage to what you said. And of course, this is said in the mind. And they also say, and I forgive you for not knowing any better that you are hurting me. I forgive myself for receiving all this energy without kindness, and I forgive you for sending me this energy without kindness. Whatever words help you in that moment to forgive yourself and forgive the other. It's a very powerful hack. It's the most difficult one, and also that's why I saved it right for the very end to tell you about it. Is it practical? Yes. Is it doable? 100%. Is it difficult? 9,999%, if there is that percentage possible. It is the most tough because forgiving somebody also means you being able to turn around and say, you know what, I'm not allowing this space to be created where what you say has power over me. It's difficult because it makes you shrug off all judgment, shrug off your own identity, and turn around and say, you are just as human as I am. And thus, if I were you, I would have forgiven myself and I would have expected forgiveness. And so I forgive you. So if you can do that already, great. If you can't do that, no worries. You'll get there someday. I have full faith in that. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, before Team Creator kicks me out, thank you very much for bringing your lovely energies to today's session. Thank you for asking the right question. Well, your questions, not the right ones. Thank you for asking your questions, and I hope the answers gave you a little bit of access to what you wanted. Please don't hesitate to follow me on Instagram, YouTube, etc. I am just going to put down my socials here for those of you who've come here anew. For those of you who've already got it and you're sick and tired of me telling you what my social details are, you're more than welcome to leave. Have a good evening, and I will see you on Saturday when we do the leadership session, else next Thursday when we come back for emotional intelligence again. So Coach Butcher is on YouTube, on Instagram, and on Twitter, and Shalu Butcher is on LinkedIn. There you go. So all sorted. Thank you very much. So much love. Bye-bye. Have an empathetic week ahead. Have a mindfulness-filled week ahead. I will see you guys soon. Bye.